Hey everybody, it's Marty the JavaScript Party. It's a rainy Sunday here in Marietta, Georgia. 70 degrees, 68 degrees. The temperature's dropped a couple degrees in the last hour or so. It is 12:30. Me and Red have been at it for a little while. We're working on paralegal flashcards, writing some code, making some videos, just having a good time. It's a nice time uh, to it's just a nice time. Just a nice time. Anyways, I did notice that I have 300 followers, and I've been sitting at 300 followers for probably, I don't know, I don't look very often. Every few days, maybe every 3 or 4 days, I'll look to see how many followers I have. And I've been sitting at 300. Like, if I gain one, then I'll lose one. If I lose one, I gain one. And I did notice that it seems like that's kind of how it works on social media in general. I think the number of followers you have is not necessarily it's sort of more it's really more for the social media people than for you. It's like they can tell, like they know if somebody logs on ahead of time if they're likely to follow or not follow if they're shown something. So they can control how many followers you have. But like it wouldn't do you any good like if they got you to a million followers, but you weren't really a million follower kind of person. Um, and it wouldn't really do you any good. And I don't think that they actually try to suppress certain people from getting to followers. It's just easy to think that. Um, I think that I'm sitting at 300 followers because I've evolved to be a 300 follower type of content creator, which is pretty good, right? Like that probably puts me in the top 20% or something, which is nice. It's a nice place to be. Um, but like you probably couldn't even consider making a living off of YouTube unless you're in the top 10% of the top 1%. So but I think 300 is a easy way for them to say, oh, okay, so yeah, he makes content. It's content. It's fine, but it's not great. It's not highly finished. It's not, it probably has some meaning on their side so that they can kind of throw you in the right category. But anyway, so I have 300 followers. I've been staying at 300 followers. I have, there's a couple people that seem to watch on a daily basis, which I genuinely appreciate you. Um, the vast majority of the people who watch my channel are in India. And then I would guess, I can't really tell this, that the vast majority of people in the United States that watch my channel are from India. So, that's interesting and fun. Um, and I do get along great with people from India in my life experience. Yeah, so here's my visual. Here's my 300. So yeah, so basically I gained 17 in the last 28 days, and I suspect I've lost about 17 in the last 28 days. It's just like I said, I think this number is just sort of a they aim to keep me at 300, not nothing nefarious. That's just a good way for them to figure out what I'm all about. Um, and then so in here, I think if I make this a little bigger, yeah, in the analytics is probably the most interesting. I haven't actually looked at this in a month, um, so like typically it looks like about 1,600 people a month, 1,600 views a month, 71.4 hours a month, and yeah, so two less than usual subscribers. I think I just finally got to where, and it's kind of funny because my best performing video is this. I created an Angular 17 application with ThreeJS in 10 minutes, and I've done an Angular 18 version and an Angular 19 version, and those things always do really good out of the gate, but then this one just goes to the top. But the Angular 18 and Angular 19 are much better videos. But so you know that's interesting thing to know about. Now the audience is probably by far the most interesting thing. So this isn't quite accurate because I do know that there are some female subscribers, and I have gotten comments from females before. So I know that it's not zero, but I guess it's close enough to 100%. And then, yeah, my audience is always skewed very young, 25 to 34. And it's kind of funny because people who are 25 to 34, you do not know how young you are. You are so young. You are such a baby. Um, like, by the time you're my age, which is in here, you will have seen like 5 generations of these people go to this level and above. It's kind of weird, right? Like you meet all these kids and then you see them turn into adults, and then you meet another set of kids and they turn into adults, and you meet others. So that's neat. So this is saying that, and this is new. It's saying that my top geography is uh, from the United States. Spain is my second one, which really surprises me. I wonder if it's the voice one, because I was talking about Spanish a lot. India is third. Normally, this one is up top by a long shot. Belgium and Germany. Now, I do all talking, right? So it does surprise me that I mostly get no subtitles. So I think that should be something that I'm proud of. But 15% of the videos have English subtitles. So it wouldn't surprise me if, like, see, like, it's funny because, like, when I'm using Teams, you can do turn subtitles on, and I can talk to people from India who I cannot actually understand, but Teams nails them perfectly. It acts, and then they tell me that they have subtitles on so that they can understand me. So we both speak English, but we speak a different flavor of English. So it's extremely difficult for the other to decode. So that's interesting to me. And then I have it translated, and it's kind of weird because it's Spanish auto translated, which I don't really know what the difference between Spanish auto translated and Polish not auto translated. I'm wondering if that is something on their side, like, so they'll convert my videos from English to Spanish through some automated thing, but it maybe in Polish they actually have a Polish someone who knows how to speak Polish actually translate it manually. Interesting stuff. Um, I feel like, so 78.3% of the people use computers, which I think makes a lot of sense because it's just about coding. Mobile phone 15%. So my wife, like her numbers are sort of the inverse of this. Um, she has like 80% mobile phone, and maybe even 90% mobile phone, and just a few percentage computer, and then a few percentage tablet, and then a few percentage TV. Um, TV is by far my favorite way to watch um, any of these sorts of videos. I watch a lot of videos like this on TV. I do regularly watch the Angular live streams, um, and I do watch those on a computer. Um, but anyways, so that is sort of who you are. You are probably a dude, very likely a dude. You are very likely between 25 and 34 years old. Um, it is interesting because this number should add up to 100, and it only adds up to less than 10. And see, that was the other thing, is that I feel like 4% is what I used to get for United States, but India was up around like 12, 14%. And maybe this is an indicator that a lot of people in India are starting to not make it possible. Use VPNs and things like that, um, so that you can't tell where they're from. That might be what that's more of an indicator on. Um, has the Seymour, but I don't think that Seymour does anything useful. Yeah, it's. Um, But anyways, so that is that. All right, so we're working on unit tests, and I think the unit tests about the problem with unit tests. It's not really a problem. It's really a good thing, but it's the kind of thing that makes it not fun. Is that it sort of points out, it makes you sort of become kind of introspective in ways that maybe you're not particularly proud of or happy about. And um, the unit tests sort of pointed out that, a lot of this code isn't being executed. And that's kind of like smoke, right? We have the saying in the United States, where there's smoke, there's often fire. Maybe where there's smoke, there is fire. So people say different variations of it, but the general idea is that um, something's wrong. We've got something wrong here. So we're passing, and that is good, and that's important. But and it's weird because I have to create a new window to do this. But when I grab and I pull over my test coverage, um, well, I do have 100% test coverage. I can't remember what I did to get 100%, but because it's because I added a unit test that happens to um, wait a second. But it's weird because some of these are waiting like 5 seconds. Yeah, this is waiting 2 seconds. But I think the thing that became very clear to me is this code doesn't, like, I feel like code, since the whole pull requests and all that stuff started, code needs to be not only translatable by the computer to write code, but it also needs to be translatable for the human to read the code. And it needs in so code like this that I have is kind of like hard to sort of turn into like a human story, like a linear human story. So we're doing a set timeout, and then it's in a second, and then we're creating four renderers, and then we're animating the visualizations in it, and then we're doing some other thing, and then we're setting up the visualizations in 0 seconds, right? Like, so this doesn't, like, when you try to take these and explain it in a sentence, that doesn't make any sense. I just said gibberish. So I really needed to turn this into something that makes a little bit more sense. And it would be kind of nice if this made a little more sense too, right? Like, what am I doing here? What does these 7 lines, what are they doing? And basically what they are doing is starting uh, uh, animation calculations, right? Or no, setting. No, we're setting up animation drawing. That's what all these lines together do, and it would probably be better. It's not even probably. It will definitely be better and go better for us in the PR if um, if we did this setup um, animation drawing. And it doesn't return anything. And these are certain things that, like, I don't really necessarily like doing them, but over time I've found that it just makes the whole PR process go a lot better if people can just read it and see, if, and then they can be like, oh, okay, they're setting up the drawing. Okay, I don't care about that. Or, oh, they're setting up the drawing. I care about that. Let me go in there. And then now you're not thinking about anything else other than this. Oh, okay, they're setting a layout loop, and they're running it, and then it runs itself. Um, and then it calls a request animation frame, And assuming that you know what a request animation frame is, and then the request animation frame calls a visualization layout. It gets past a function, a callback function. So this is the redraw function, right? So I feel like that's pretty good. Um, so now when we're at this top main entry point of the constructor, we say, oh, okay, we're setting up the animation drawing. Do I care about that? Yes or no? Now, when they look in the PR, what's going to happen is they're going to be looking at just at this change, and then they'll be like, okay, I'll worry about that when I get to that, or maybe that's something that already exists or whatever. And then when they're over here looking in the way the UI works for the PRs, they'll see that they'll just look at this, and then they'll only have to try to understand what's going on in here. So we just kind of lowered the overall level of what you have to understand. And so we should save that and just make sure it works. And what we should see is these things just slowly roll around. And we know it worked because these animations are working. So it's doing the calculations, and that is cool. So then let's go to the next line. And we're creating 4 renderers, and we're animating all 4 renderers. And then we're waiting till the next till after everything is drawn, after the cycle has ended, um, in order before we do our visualization setup. And that is absolutely necessary because we're in the constructor. Nothing exists. The template has not been rendered yet. So this set of visualization depends on having access to these actual DOM elements, but they don't exist yet. So, so maybe it would be nice if this was like wait for DOM or something, so that someone understands what the intentions of this code is. And then we want to create and animate visualizations. That's the whole code to all this. And then we want to wait for the DOM, and then we want to set those visualizations up, right? So like this again doesn't read, it doesn't translate into modern American English the way we talk to each other in general, and the way we give each other instructions and understand instructions. So we really do want to try to use techniques of creating functions and stuff in order to turn this into something that's a little bit more understandable. So it seems like we need a function that's called something like this dot create renders, and it should be like create and animate renders, animate renders. And it seems like what we want to do is be able to pass in like the number of renderers we want to create, and so just to kind of jump ahead, like this is how long we want. So then later we're going to want to do the same thing. Okay, so actually that's good. So this is create and animate renderers 4. We want to create 4 of those, right? And so we want all this code to end up in that create and animate renderers. But we're going to loop and create 4 of them, and then we're going to animate them, and then we're going to have it pause or have it wait for the DOM to build out, and then it's going to set up the visualization. See, so to me that sounds like American narrative sort of way of talking about things. So so these are kind of things that I know, but I haven't. Here, I'm just gonna paste this here, and then, but I've never articulated. And these were very, very painful to learn. Like, it was not pleasant learning this stuff because, you would build stuff and it would work. And then, like, the people I was working with that had, fancy titles and stuff, like, couldn't understand it. And then, as part of understanding it, they would kind of sort of have me make all kinds of bizarre changes that would generally end up making the code very, very unstable. Okay, so that's not going to return anything, but it does accept a count, right? And that's going to be a number. And I don't know why it's showing an error right now. It seems like it should be happy. Oh, I didn't have I'm missing my colon there. There we go. And so now we're going to want to do a for loop, right, over. And you get a lot of weird trick interview questions about these for loops and whether you make something a var or a let. And I just like haven't made anything. I don't ever like, it's been probably at least 10 years since I've used the keyword var. I mean it took me a couple years to decide to use var and const. I definitely fought that big time, but it less than count. Then it took me a while to warm up and decide to use var const and let instead of var, but once I switched over, so many weird, funky little bugs just went away that I'm sort of a believer now. So we don't actually want. So this needs to be outside the loop, right? And then this needs to be outside the loop. All right, so now basically we just want to do this for all of them. All right, so what are we doing? We're creating and animating renderers. That's what we're doing. Here we're doing the creation part. Here we're doing the animation part. But then here it's like, okay, what are we doing here? Okay, and I don't know what to name this thing. I'm just gonna say, wait for DOM. Setup. DOM visualizations. Now, it would be so nice if we could always be able to just self-document everything in the name of the function, but sometimes you just can't, and you just need to add a comment. So it's like, wait for Angular to build DOM objects, DOM elements. And then we're just going to go like here. And this isn't actually where we're doing that, so I'm going to need to move that comment. Set up DOM. So I used to get like just insanely defensive during these things, and I was defensive. Like, I was trying to defend the code, because the problem is that people were trying to get me to make really, really bad decisions. and I could not figure out how to get them. I could not figure out how to communicate effectively. Like, dude, you are about to screw this entire thing up. Like, I would have some code that was just rock solid, just ready to rock and roll, and then like some person would be like with a title would be like, oh, can you change this to that? And like there was just no, I could never effectively communicate like why what they were asking me to do was really, really bad idea. So I think this is where that comment should go. This is the moment where they'll be like, why are we doing this? And when they see this little wait for Angular to build DOM elements, that should be good enough for most reviewers to either decide that they don't understand well enough, so they're not going to give an approval, or to get them to give you the approval because they're like, oh, okay, you're right, we're in the constructor. It's not necessarily going to work. Okay, so here we go. There's a very good chance something is going to break at this point. Nope, it didn't, because it would have broke on the first one. All right, so now we've done this. I don't know that these comments are going to do us any good anymore because we can create as many as we want, right? And then I guess there's a place. There's a place in France where the women wear no pants. Where we want to say that there can only be 16 at this time. At this time, browsers limit browsers are limited to 16 renders. So now that ThreeJS bug or error that was where it was saying you sent me null, things broke, makes so much more sense, because the browser was deleting the previous renderers. This comment likely, it just depends. It depends on who the client is. There is so like if you work for like some big government agency, federal government particularly, and you're working for like I don't know, a big consultancy company, this comment probably will never make it. Like they'll probably ask you to remove this comment. If you're working for a company directly and this is code that they're using, this comment will probably be truly appreciated. And if you're working for a company that is building stuff for like a government agency, but the government agency isn't really taking delivery of the code, you're just sort of building it so that they can have it, this comment, they'll probably let it go, but they aren't going to be thrilled about it. It's just one of those things. I don't know, and I don't really understand exactly why, but that's what I've seen. So this is good. So we set up animation drawing. I don't know what that even does so anymore. Let's go to the definition. Oh yeah, that's the thing that does the layout. I guess I should call it loop. I think I would understand that. I would have understood that better if this is. And then create and animate renderers. So, and it's saying create for. Now, this we want to basically create and animate renderers after 4 seconds. So we kind of have two paths we can go on here. We can say we could just add another thing here, another argument, and say the amount of time, or we can create a new function that waits, that we pass an argument to, and then it calls this. And it's just like when we read this, I think it would be easier to understand if I say this and animate create No, let's call this pause. No, wait. Wait, create, and animate renders. And that we will pass it in the number that we want to create and then the amount of time, the number of milliseconds we want it to wait. And then this is the code that we want. So I'm just going to Control X this. And then, you know what? I'm going to Control Z this. And I'm going to Control Copy this. So I have it. And then I'm going to Control. And I'm just going to delete this because I have this in the clipboard. And I'm going to come down here. And then I'm going to do this. And then I'm going to get rid of the this in front of this thing. And I'm going to give this the count. Let's try to stay, it's really important to try to stay consistent with these namings. It makes it so much easier on people's brains to be able to just connect these dots. And then time. And I'm just going to call it ms for milliseconds, and that's a number. So there are definitely some brilliant people who talk about clean code that will tell you not to use abbreviations inside of these sorts of things. I do think that that is kind of a generally a very good law, but rule, but not necessarily a good oh, now we can use our bind that we learned about yesterday, hopefully. But it's not necessarily a good, it's not like a good law to be like, never violate this law. There are some good rules that you should just never, ever, ever under any circumstances violate. I don't think that the never use abbreviations is a good one, because I feel like MS is almost a word in its own. Like it's such a commonly used abbreviation that it's become a word in its own. Like HTML, I think, is more of a word than hypertext markup language. Like I think most people, like if you walked around, most people that do web coding and you say HTML, there's almost 100% chance they're going to know what you're talking about. If you say hypertext markup language, there's a possibility. So in some ways, HTML is more of a word than hypertext markup language. And a word is like a phrase that means something specific. But anyways, so I believe what we can do, and I'm not 100% sure on this, I can say, I believe animation renders dot bind and count. And I believe that's basically telling it in 1 second, and then this should be ms. That in the amount of time that you told me to run, go ahead and run this function up here with 4, with the count. So let's see if that works. I'm about 80% sure that's going to work. Oh, and it took it a little longer than I was expecting. Well, maybe it didn't work. I don't think it worked because we only got 3 rows. So it did feel a little longer and it didn't work. So let's go to our console and see if we got an error. Error. This animate visualizations is not. Did I call the wrong? So it looks like it lost its context here when I did this. So what I'm going to do here is just for testing purposes, I believe I can default this to 4. And I'm going to get rid of this. I think it still won't work though. Yeah. So we did get the first four, so the defaulting worked. So let's go to ChatGPT and ask it about context. Use set timeout. And I lose context. See if that's enough information for it to find the answer I'm looking for. So it did figure it out. I think this is it telling me that, hey, you're going to lose your context here. And then it talks about prototypes. I don't think I want to go down this path at this point. It probably would be interesting. So I'm wondering. So this kind of is a bummer because. Okay, so I think we're going to have to make this an arrow function. Or, yeah. So I think it has to be like this, which is kind of a bummer because it's a little bit harder to unit test something like this. But I do think that little um, delay thing solves this problem, but maybe not. I don't know. We'll say. So I think we can say this dot create count, and what'll happen is it's going to execute this, but it won't because it sees this arrow. It knows not to not to create a new this new this variable. So then it should be able to continue, I think. So hopefully we have 4 rows after this. Yeah. So, but now I'm wondering in our unit tests, let's go back to our unit tests. And I think we figured out that we have to refresh that to get them to run again. That it won't just do it because you made changes. And then, yeah, so we lost some of our code coverage. Oh, but we didn't. Oh, let's see at our weight. Yeah, see, we lost this because it didn't know how to. It didn't know how to. It didn't have time to run this code in here. Um, so this did get called. Oh, it never does. I need to get rid of that 4 thing, that default value. Man, I thought I had this. Thought I had this solved. I knew though the minute I went to um, a one of these that I would lose my that it wouldn't run it. You know that it would wait to execute that code. But if it's just a function, it won't. It'll execute the internal code, I think. Um, but yeah, this is what I want to get rid of. And let's see if it still works after I get rid of that, or if that's. I think it will. Yeah. So what I don't really want to do it this way because it's hard, just only because it's harder to unit test. Um, but I wonder, like, um, if I write a unit test specifically for weight and Okay, this should not be animation. Create and animate. Render. Wait, wait, create, and animate. Wait, create, and animate renderers. So we're in some ways right now what we're doing is kind of like TDD, right? Like we know what we want. We've written, well, I guess no, it's not because I have not written unit tests. But it seems like what I want to do is actually create a specific unit test for this that just tests this directly. I think that's super obvious at this point. Now, I think, and I definitely want to kind of dig into that, but let's go ahead and finish this up. So then this waits for, what's the second one? 2 seconds. And then why did I make that 3 seconds? That's so funny. 2 seconds and then 3 seconds. Boy, it feels like it's getting cold out there. There's a pretty cold draft coming into the room. Let's see, what's the, so it says the current temperature is 67 degrees, so only 3 degrees. I think that like when you feel cold, like if you're when you're like, oh man, it feels hot or feels warm or whatever, I think you're feeling more than one thing. I think you're feeling um your the change as well, the delta. I think you can change because sometimes it's just like 28 degrees outside, it doesn't feel that cold, but it seems like whenever it's like that way, it's actually getting warmer. And then when it can be like 55 degrees and feel freezing, and then you look and it's getting colder. Let's see if this works. And this is nice because now we can make this like, instead of, we can make this like 500 milliseconds, 1000, 1500, right? We have a lot more control over things in general at this point. And it's so much more readable, right? So we're going to set up the animation drawing loop. We're going to create and animate 4 renderers. We're going to wait, create, and animate 4 renderers for 500 milliseconds. Wait, create, and animate renderers for 1000 and 1500. So back like in the 1990s, gosh, so much stuff happened in the 90s coding. That's when people just went to war over whether this should be 0.5 and this should be 1 and this should be 1.5, right? Like why pass in, you should maybe pass in the number of seconds. It should be fun to watch what happens. That was really interesting. um, but um, but I think we ended up settling in on 500, like passing in milliseconds, because at some point you're just going to have to come to terms with milliseconds. And so the sooner you get exposed to this millisecond situation, the better. All right. So I think this is good though. Like this constructor looks so much better. I think it reads in a much more human, at least American human. Like I've only spoken, I mean, so I only could only I spoke Spanish before I was 5, but then when I was 5, because I lived with my Spanish speaking grandmother for most of the time before I was 5, or at least a lot of time before I was 5, and then after I was 5, I moved with my parents, and I went to like a English, not a bilingual school, an English only school. So so when I say I've only spoken English, I can't say that to be truth, but I can't really speak Spanish today. So English and the American version of English is all I'm really familiar with. And I can tell you that this reads in the standard narrative style that I'm used to. Um, Set up animation drawing loop, create and animate renderers, and then 4 of them. Wait and create animation renderers 4 and 500. Wait, and create animation renders for and 1000, wait and create animation renders for and 1500. Like that reads in a very, very natural way for me, or a way that I'm extraordinarily comfortable with. And so I think this right here would have a very, very, very high chance, at least these would have a very high chance of making it through a PR without problems. Like I've worked in many places, and I've experienced the situation where like you create a PR for something, somebody puts up a big fight, and then it never goes anywhere. Like that code just never, it just dies. It just dies on the vine, and then whatever that bug is just a problem, and sometimes that bug can stick around for years, and then suddenly goes. Someone says, "Why the heck isn't this fixed?" And you're like, "Well, I have a PR that I put out 2 years ago um, to fix this, but the XYZ person, and maybe they're not even around anymore, or maybe they're doing something else, or maybe they've softened up or whatever. They put up a fight, and then they go back and look at it and like, oh, I don't really understand why I ever fought to this. Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and do it, and then it goes right out. Like that kind of thing happens all the time. But so then if we go to set up animation drawing loop, we looked at that. That looked good. If we go to create animate, it says, hey, loop over from 0 to the count, animate the visualizations, set up DOM visualization. Oh, we're setting up DOM visualizations. Okay, let's go look at that. Set up DOM, and you got to realize that they probably won't look at it that way. They'll probably just scroll down, and they'll look at other things. Oh, okay, so here's our wait and create. Oh, it does a timeout for the amount of time, and then it calls that. Okay, that makes sense. Set up DOM visualization. Oh, okay, so this one is where you have a lot of risk of problems. Wait for Angular to build DOM elements. Wait, Angular builds DOM elements, and it only takes 1 second. It takes 0 seconds. What does this even mean? And at least this will give them any developer that's worth their salt would be able to at least do some Google searches and sort of understand what this is about and get an idea. Or they'll bail. Like they'll just be like, yeah, I don't know what this is about. I bail. Um, and then, so that all looks good. And I think the only problem that I really want to deal with is, okay, so if let's go ahead and run our unit tests again. Everybody passed. Reload this. Everything looks good except for this one line here. This is the only line. So I think it makes sense to write a unit test to do that. Wait and create animation renders. In Angular, how do you unit test something with a set timeout? You'll often want to. Well, so the funny thing is for the unit test, I can send in 0, right? But this is worth learning about. Okay, Angular's fake async utilities. So this is probably what we want to try to do. And so we probably want to use this tick to simulate, and then, but we're going to have to bring these in probably, and then who knows if this is, all of these frameworks are constantly changing, so it may not even be limit, but we can get the general idea of what we want to do. And so we want to use it, and then we want to run this, and then check something, so I suspect all we could literally get 100% by just having it tick 1000 in our existing unit tests. like here, we could probably have it do this tick thing. So let's try that. Since we're here, and let's just do our tick 1000, which should be plenty because we have that one that runs after a half a second. So I don't know if the unit tests do run at this point. See, they didn't run, so let's just see. I don't even know if it's going to break or not. Oh, it failed. Oh, text content. Oh, okay. So we have an error. I don't think it will run again. Ah, it did run again. So sometimes it runs again, sometimes it doesn't. Running a fake azone, fake async. Okay, so we should have done this. So it wants another. It wants to be. I guess we learned yesterday this is a callback, and basically it wants to have this fake async, and I don't know if that plays well with the detect changes or not. We did kind of sort of merge those two things, which is what like ChatGPT does all the time, right? That's its thing. It kind of takes. So it should. So cancel what? Reload. That's weird. Okay, so that passed. Let's see what our code coverage did. Yep, and now that's called. And it's only it's because it waited a half a second, so we got or a full second, so that happened, and it actually fake waited. I think. See, I don't think it actually allows you to simulate. So it simulated a set time without actually waiting, and it's very important that you do that because, like, I literally have worked at places where it takes 2.5 hours for all these to run. Now, let's talk about the bigger picture. We spent a lot of time on unit tests. Was it worth it? Is it worth it? For me, on a personal basis, in this context, yes, it's very, very worth it. I've learned a lot, um, and I've got to explore a lot of concepts and ideas that I just normally don't have time to play around with. I get stuff working, but it's like I don't have time to just play around. A lot of times I have work I got to do, at work. What a concept. But so is it worth it at work to have these unit tests? Again, that's contextual. If you work in a place where there's going to be a long time, like there's a lot of bureaucracy that has to happen for the code to actually ever make it out, then it probably makes sense to slow things down and really do a deep dive into everything, because it doesn't really do anybody any good if you back the system up, right? Like if the system can only, the way it's set up can only accept 15, 20 changes in a month, and you can do 100 changes in a month, then back in 6 months, having a backed up 500 extra changes just waiting there because QA and all the other people can't go through the whole process of getting it out there, then you're way better off getting a solid grasp of all these things and getting everything built out like to no ends, because as a developer you're just way faster. Your velocity is just so outpaces the velocity of other things, and that is something that you see happen in agile a lot. Is the a lot of places have, basically they think they're agile, but what they have is wagile fall. So they have waterfall that goes into the development team, right? So basically, the requirement people and all them, they have to have everything all worked out. They're not going to give you a single requirement until they've thought through every single little thing, and then they it all gets broken down into agile little units of work, and so then the developers are just pounding out at agile units of work. But then QA is like, yeah, well, I don't want to test it until all the requirements are complete, and then by the time you've tested it, you you've completely. I mean, so now all these units are they're trying to get all these units tested as a complete group, and then they find out, oh, something doesn't work the way we thought it was going to work. So then it goes all the way back to the BAs. They go through their whole waterfall thing again. They figure out exactly how everything's supposed to be, and then um, they give it to the devs. The devs break it down into little pieces and move through it, and then QA sits there and waits until everything's ready because they don't want to test anything until all the pieces are in place, and it's just a misery. And probably the worst part of it is that typically it won't get merged into the main branch until QA signs off on it. So what happens is you end up with massive, just absolutely massive Git conflicts, because like all their different pieces are in that QA has finally signed off on through their waterfall thing, and now they got 8, 10, 20, 30 branches that have all this different code that achieves all the different pieces, and then it all tries to get merged in, and there's code conflicts all over the place, and it's just a nightmare. So anyways, yeah, that Agile fall is a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. Every place that does that is just a hellhole. um, but anyway, so I think this is squared away. I think I'm happy with it. I mean, I know I'm not like testing these things directly, and I don't really want it. I never really want to test it because I don't think these, like I think this one might be around for a while, but I don't. I really don't think that this this one or this are going to be around. I think those are going to be part of something completely different. I don't think we're going to. I mean, I don't have any intention to build all these things out of the app. So the app isn't going to be building these things. So those functions have no reason to exist. The only use that they really did for me was A, so we could demo this, and B, it brought up just some interesting conceptual things that I wanted to understand. But anyways, guess it's time for me to sign off. Me and Rhett. Um, I don't know if you could hear the thunder out there. We're getting a really nice storm coming in. And happy coding, everybody. Bye.